All right, so if you've ever cruised before and never gone aft when you meant to go forward, you never ended up on the wrong side of the ship, or you've never had to stop for a moment to think about how you're going to get somewhere, quite frankly, this video probably isn't for you. But for the rest of you, we're going to call you normal people. This one's going to help. Hi, I'm Jan.
And I'm Tracy, and on this video, we're going to give you a simple system to help you navigate your next cruise ship without getting lost and wasting a lot of time. And the first thing we recommend is go to your cruise line's website and look up the tab that has deck plans on it and just take a little time to glance through it. And there's a couple of ways that you can approach this. You can go from the top of the ship to the bottom of the ship, or the bottom to the top, but we always start with our cabin first. And from there, we work our way to the bottom of the ship, and then we go back up to the top and work our way back down. Why? Because for most cabins, the main dining rooms, the theater, your guest services, and most of the lounges you're going to be going to, you're going to find are going to be on your lower decks anyway. So starting with your cabin, that gives you an immediate sense of how to get there and the places that you're probably going to visit most often. Don't just look at the venues themselves. Pay attention to the stairs and the elevators and how they connect to the decks. Because sometimes the stairs and the elevators are on the same area, and sometimes they're in the next corridor over. It really depends on your ship's layout. Some areas actually aren't that accessible directly, so you may need to go forward or aft first. And then one of the big tips that we use, especially on these mega ships, is take note of those main corridors. We call them the super highways that run from forward to aft, because you're going to end up using those ones a lot.
After looking at the deck plans, what we do is we go to our favorite social media platform, YouTube, and we look for ship tours. We love channels like Hard Travel does a really good job, Travel With Us, and of course there's a small little channel you might not have heard of, Jan and Tracey Travels. Go on and subscribe. One of the things we do, and it really helps, is we always have the deck plans actually with us while we're watching one of those ship tours, because that way we can refer back to the deck plans itself to be able to orient ourselves where we are on the ship with what we're actually seeing in the video. And that's actually something we try to do on our own ship tours, because what we'll do is we'll actually always have a deck plan that's below Tracy and I with a small little red dot that shows you where we are on the ship.
Now, once you get to the port and you get on board, keep in mind, ship layouts do vary, but we found that there are some common patterns on most ships. For example, starting with the buffet, why the buffet is because once you get on the ship past your muster, the first thing you're going to do is have lunch. And the buffet is usually going to be located on an upper deck, and it's usually going to be towards the aft of the ship or the back of the ship. And it's usually going to be near the pool deck, and that kind of makes sense because you swim, you get hungry, you get a snack, and you go back out to the pool. Now, speaking of your pool, the pool is usually going to be like in the main part of the center of the higher top decks. Your theater, when you're going to go to shows at night, it's going to be usually on one of the lowest decks of the ship. It's going to usually be towards the front of the ship, and often there's going to be several entrances. One's going to be at the main level, and there might be like a balcony level entrance. But don't let superstitions trip you up on cruising, because almost all cruise lines, the deck above 12 is not going to be 13. It's usually going to be deck 14, as cruise lines tend to skip this unlucky number 13, except for ones like MSC, because MSC is also not going to have a deck 17, because in Italian culture, 17 is an unlucky number. Now, again, not every ship follows this exact layout, but there are those things that you want to identify when you're at home, so you're not wasting a lot of time on your vacation.
And then there's boarding day, and this is really the day that it's really easy to get turned around. Most of the time, now you have to understand, is when you come on the ship, usually you're going to come on near the center of the ship, near the atrium, but that's not always. Now, unfortunately, the one thing you have to be able to find, usually on the first day, is the muster station that you have to go to, which you're not going to find anywhere before you're getting on the ship on a deck plan. You are going to see on the back of your crew card, you're going to see your muster station, like A1 or B2 or B3, but it's not going to tell you where that is. Don't worry. The good news is there's always going to be crew that is nearby helping passengers get their bearings, as well as finding out where your muster is. Don't be shy. Go and ask them where you need to go. That's what they're there for. Now, you're also going to find deck plans usually nearby the elevators on most ships, and on many of these are interactive, which really makes it easy to be able to figure out where you are and where you need to get going. And when you're trying to figure out what deck you need to be on, not a problem. When you go into the elevator, look above the buttons, and what normally you're going to find is you're going to see a list of all of the major venues and then what deck there is. It's just a really good way to orient yourself. Now, beyond the signage, most cruise lines really now have really good mobile apps with that which have the deck plans. These are great. We recommend, if possible, download those apps before you get to port. That way, once you get onto the ship, you're always going to have a map of the ship with you.
Now, often the place that feels the hardest to find, especially if you haven't been on this ship before, is your cabin. But it's a lot easier once you understand a couple of things. First, your cabin number usually tells you which deck you're on. For example, if you're in cabin 7002, you're going to be in deck 7. If you're in cabin 11250, you're going to be on deck 11, and so on.
Now, once you find the deck, the next step is figuring out what side of the ship your room is going to be on. And on most ships, even number cabins are going to be on the port or the left side, and odd number cabins are going to be on the starboard or the right side of the ship. It's not universal, but it's common enough. Is a really great starting point. But then it's really still easy, even if you've been on board several days, to get turned around, especially when you have you're getting off on elevators that have elevators facing at each other, because you can't always rely upon the fact that when I come off the elevator, I'm always going to go left to my cabin or going right to the cabin, because it really depends upon what elevator you're coming out on. What I do is I always look for the house phone. There is almost always in an elevator banks, or you're going to find a house phone. Usually it's for emergencies. So what I do is look at which side is that house phone on. Is it the port side or the starboard side? And often what you'll find is these phones tend to be on the same location from deck to deck. So when you notice that, you can really use that as a reference point. For example, on our last cruise, I knew every time I was coming off an elevator going to my cabin, if I was going towards the direction of the phone, I was going to the right direction.
Now that you're on the right side of the ship, you need to know whether you're going to go forward or aft. And again, this comes back to your room number. So on most ships that we've been on, the lower the cabin numbers tend to be towards the front of the ship. Again, cabin 7002, you're going to be on deck 7, and you're going to be towards the forward of the ship. And higher numbers are going to be towards the aft of the ship. So it's a good plan just to follow the numbers to your cabin. Now, on certain ships, they even do a one better for you. So ones like Norwegian, you're going to notice on the carpeting on the floor patterns like fish or kelp or directional shapes. Often those patterns flow forward towards the front of the ship. Now, it's not something you can rely on everywhere and on every ship, but when it's there, it's a nice little cheat code.
All right, so now you know how to navigate a ship. Watch us go deck by deck on one of our favorite ships so you can see how this all comes together. And until the next horizon, keep on traveling.